Good evening and welcome to the Journey Home. This is the segment of the month that we dedicate to international converts to the church. Those of you who are new to the Journey Home program, we try and set a pattern every month. The first Monday of the month is open line, in which we focus even more on your phone calls and emails. And usually in that program we have a returning guest or a lifelong Catholic here as a guest to answer your questions. And then the third Monday of each month we have focused on international converts. We began last year with our tapes from England, and then this year we focused on converts from Canada. So tonight we have a guest from Canada, but in a certain sense, I feel like our program tonight is even more international because our guest tonight, who's Kim St. Maurice, yes, is from Montreal, Canada, but she was born in Vietnam and is an immigrant to Canada, and her journey is from the Buddhist faith into the Catholic faith. And so we're going to have a little bit of discussion a little bit farther afield than we often get here in the Journey Home program. But I want to right off the bat remind you that you're an important part of the program. So if you'd like to give us a call with your question, if you're inside North America, you can call us at 1-800-221-9460. If you're outside North America, you can call us at 205-271-2980, or you can send us an email at journeyhome, one word, at EWTN.com. Kim, welcome to the Journey Home.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm excited about our continued Catholic converts from Canada series, and so far all of you have been a little bit connected, haven't you?
Yes, we are.
What was the father's name that we had about 2 months ago?
Father Nikolai, Eric Nikolai.
That's right, Father
yes.
Nikolai.
Yeah.
And
he's a connection. So
that's right. And then last month was
Julie Waters.
Julie Waters.
Yes.
Julie Waters. That's right. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very
with
much.
us. And even as we speak, one of the things we're in the back of our mind is that we're both flying home tomorrow morning, and we're flying into a snowstorm in Ohio, and then on to Montreal, and I go on to Columbus. So we pray that the Lord will have a window of opportunity for us to get through the mess.
Yes, I hope so too.
All right. Well, let's begin as we do every week and invite you to share us a little bit of your spiritual background.
Yes, well, I think all started when I was 5 years old, and
in Vietnam, right?
In Vietnam, yes. I was born in Vietnam, and then I went to all my high school over there. So I was 5 years old, and then my father worked for a French government. And then in that year, his boss, who was a French man from France, who was leaving Vietnam because it was after the defeat, the Dien Bien Phu defeat. So all the French there were starting to leave the country. So he was coming to my parents' house to bid farewell to my parents. And then he saw me there, and it was apparently, my mom told me I was like about at his knee level, you know, that tall. I was 5 years old. And he looked down at me and he said, are you going to school? Well, I said, well, so my mom said, not yet, but she's going to. So he said, where? Well, I said, I don't know. She doesn't know yet. Well, he said, well, just send her in the back there. There's some a school in the back. So my mother said, no, we can't, because it's a French private school, a private French school, and we cannot afford to send her there. So he said, well, it's okay, I'm going to pay for her tuition. So there we go. So there I was. So he decided to pay for my tuition, and he wanted to pay for my brothers too. But my brother, he was older than he's older than he already started in Vietnamese school. He didn't want to change. So there I was, went to that school, which was about a few houses away from mine, and then I just walked to that school, and it was French. And I still remember, you know, smelling that sweet smell of jam that the lady that making there. So so I went there, and it was just not kindergarten. I think it goes up to a certain level, like grade 1 or 2. And then after that, we have to change school. So my parents decided I have to change school, but he didn't want. We have private. All the French schools over there are private, and they have Catholic schools run by the nuns, or they have like lay schools, you know. So my father wouldn't let me go to the Catholic schools because it means that you have to be converted. You have to convert to Catholic first to go to the school. So my father said, no way, you're not converted. So he brought me to the other private schools, but I have to take exams to go to those schools. And I remember I failed. I still remember they asked me this, the arm in French, and I just forgot completely what it means, the arm in French. I just remember in Vietnamese. So it's amazing how God works. Just looking back at those events.
So you went to the French non-Catholic school?
No. Yes,
French?
exactly. The first years, it's non-Catholic.
Right.
Then after that, when you move up, you can choose either Catholic or non-Catholic. But since I failed my exam with the non-Catholic, he found out that it was one Catholic school that didn't ask you to convert to Catholicism before going there. Okay. So obviously, I succeeded the exam there, so I got to that school then. And so I wasn't Catholic at all, but every morning before starting classes, we say Our Father and Hail Mary, and that's how I learned. Without knowing that will serve me later, that's how I learned. So every morning, and then after that, I know by heart. And I remember there's this chapel there too, and then once in a while, I just go through, take a shortcut to go from one side of school to the other side, and to just curious, just look to see what is the chapel, and
But it wasn't making an impact on you at that point in your life?
No, nothing at all.
Like even just reciting the Our Father and the Hail Mary were just to get you through, I suppose.
Yes, that we do that, so I just did it. Yes, yeah.
Wow.
So then after high school, so I did all my high school there, and then after high school we moved to university, and my parents decided to send me abroad to go to university, because when you go abroad, when you come back, you should have a good job. And usually the parents send children to go to France, to Paris, because Vietnam used to be a French colony. So when you go abroad, we go to France. But my parents didn't want to send me there, because they said, no, in Paris is a city of laity. You wouldn't study, you have too much fun. So send you to Montreal, Canada. It's going to be cold there, and then you have no choice. You have to study. Yeah. So he sent me there, but my brother was already there. My brother is 7 years older than me, so he was already there. That's how my parents sent me there. So I was there, and then I studied, and then with the purpose in mind that I go back to my country after to get a job. And but I was there 2 years, and then after that I couldn't go back to my country because it became communist in 1975.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go back. So the passport was not good and everything. So I stayed in Canada, and after school I started working. And that, but when but there's another thing is when I went to university, I stayed at a residence for girls, and run by the nuns again, And then so the nuns, they one of them, she really liked me, and she said, "Oh, you must miss your parents, your country," and she took care of me. And one day she said, "You're Buddhist?" I said, "Yes." "So you believe in reincarnation?" I said, "Yes." Well, she said, "Well, too bad, we don't. Catholic, we don't, but it's okay. I pray for you, with conversion." Well, I said, "Yeah, yes, okay." So then after that, I stayed there, and then I worked. After the university, I worked, and I got a job, and that's where I met my husband, who is a French Canadian. And I was very surprised because he practiced. He's a practicing Catholic. I was surprised because, you know, when I go to Canada, what I realize in Quebec, what I see is people didn't practice much anymore. So he practiced, and then his family, he comes from a big family, and then everybody practiced. I was, wow, it's amazing.
So that was a real witness on you because of the surprise, the fact that they were actually living their faith when sadly it wasn't always the case in the culture you were in.
Yes.
I want to back up a little bit. Have you talk a little bit about more of your Buddhist upbringing? So when you were a child, during all that time, were you active in the Buddhist?
Mm-hmm.
Is it correct for me to call it the Buddhist faith? Did you call it that way?
Yes, or you can call it Buddhist, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
because it's question is, you know, how do we understand Buddhism? And as you and I talked earlier, sometimes it's hard to define because there's so many different branches of flavors. But first of all, were you active? Talk about how your active Buddhist involvement as a child.
I was a good Buddhist child because I followed my parents to the temples, and then I would did the prayers. Although I didn't understand anything of what I said because it wasn't, I don't know, it was translated from Hindu or something, you know, into Vietnamese, but still it's hard to understand. But I recited all the prayers, and then I did every month we have a certain number of days that we don't eat meat. So I just, you know, I enjoyed it. I did it. So it was I was a good Buddhist, and then even the monks asked me if I want to be monks. You know, I said no, I don't want to because the monks you have to shave your head, and I said I don't want to shave my hair and things like that, and I don't want to be. You have to be out of the world. The ones that I knew, they lived in the Buddhist temples, and then they are not in the world. You know, so I said no. It for me it's too easy that, you know. It's not very fair to say that, but I say it's much harder to stay in the middle of the world, you know, and control yourself and live your faith and all the virtues. It's harder. So I said no, I don't want to. But
so you were active in childhood, all the way through school, all the way into college. Did you remain active as a Buddhist?
No, not really. I tried to, but I couldn't because in Canada at that time there was not too many Vietnamese, there were just a few students from Vietnam. So I tried to look for the temples and practice, but I couldn't because there was either none, or if there are some, they're not Vietnamese actually, they may be Hindu or Chinese, and the practice is completely different. So I was a little bit disappointed, but so I didn't really practice the Buddhism.
Some of the main, on the one hand, the similarities between Buddhism and Catholicism, of course, you would have prayer, right? As the Buddhists pray. But you might tell the audience, well, but who are you praying to as a Buddhist?
Well, we pray to Buddha, and we ask him. What I remember is asking Buddha to help, you know, to go through the, ask him to a certain day that we reach the level that we don't have to come back on earth and become a human being.
Reincarnate again, right?
Exactly.
In Buddhism, when you are reincarnated, is it only as human beings that you're reincarnated, or I forget which faith it was that you're come back as a mosquito or something?
Yes, that's what I learned too in my beliefs at that time. Is that you can come back in any kind. Now you can hear that people in the New Age movement that can talk that you can come back in only in human beings, so you can do whatever you didn't have time to do in the previous life. But in the Buddhism that I learned when I grew up, it's you can become whatever kind it is, depending on what life you led in the previous life. So it's kind of discouraging a little bit because you don't know what you have done, what you did to become a mosquito, or as you said, or a dog, you know, whatever, or even worse, whatever, you know.
Whatever. And you were, and at any given time, a person has no way even of judging how well they're doing in this life, measuring so that they can have some idea of what they might come back as in the next life, right? I mean, it's...
Yes, it's hard because, well, for me, I find it's hard because Buddhism doesn't believe in God and in someone who judges. So it's hard that how can you judge yourself? You know, you cannot be objective. And then in the next life, you're supposed to forget what you did in the previous life. You don't remember at all.
Yeah.
So it's not very...
Unless you're one of our new age Hollywood starlets that's into this kind of stuff and you know, is talking about her previous third life from before, you know.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, that's the new age side of this whole thing.
Yeah.
So I guess my reason for asking that, we may get more questions about the ins and outs of Buddhism later, but really to show that it wasn't just a clean step, you know, like many of our converts that go from Protestant to the Catholic faith. You were really completely going to a different faith that really...
It's a big jump.
A big jump. You didn't
Yes.
believe in God. In fact,
No.
it's almost interesting to think if there's no God, and therefore no one to judge, and the Buddha that you pray for is really just a human being
Exactly.
that happened to break free,
Yes.
then who decides what level you're coming back at? That's right. There's no answer to that.
Exactly. Yeah, I find it a little bit hard to, yes. But I, as a certain sense, I believe in God because I asked my father once, because when I get married with my husband, my husband, he talks to me about Opus Dei, because, you know, and then he said, Opus Dei is that you live your faith in the middle of the world. Well, I said, wow, because, you know, as I said before, when I answered the monks, I said, no, I don't want to go out of the world, I want to stay in the world. And then when he's talking about that, I said, well, something like that exists. I mean, I already thought about it. But after I get married, I accepted, when we get married, I accepted that the children will be brought up as Catholic. They will be baptized. And that's fine with me, because I said, well, it's one religion or another, it's fine, as long as they have a religion, so it's good. So, but I never thought of converting myself. But what my mother did is, she said, well, when you get married, you have to go with your husband anywhere he goes. And then, so I end up going to Mass with him, you know. So when he goes to Mass, I just go with him, and then I sit there. And then I guess that's how the Holy Spirit started. I mean, God started working already when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
But that, you know, it started getting to me that I find the Mass is very moving, and that at least I can understand what I was praying and to whom I was praying. And then I believe in God in a certain sense, because I started asking, you know, myself questions where we've come from. And so I asked my father, where do we come from? Where do human beings come from? So he said, well, according to the Buddhist faith, Buddhism, it's from a combination of dust, you know, all kind of dust in the universe, and then we get together and becomes human being. So I said, well, fine, but who created dust and who created the universe? Well, he said, well, I don't know, you know. So I said, well, he doesn't have the answer to that, but I said, well, no, there must be somebody who is, you know, superior to the dust and the universe to create those things. And that's how that did starting to work in my...
That's interesting. So it was almost like the argument from design that got your attention, that there has to be a designer, there has to be a source, a cause behind all this. And it's curious to me to think that, would you say that the average Buddhist doesn't go there, you know, doesn't think that way, or that they just presume that these are questions beyond anything that we can understand?
I cannot tell for the other people, but if I look at my parents and my father, no, he doesn't ask those questions. Yeah, he just does his prayers, and he said one day what his purpose is, his goal is to get out of that circle, the reincarnation circle, and to get to nirvana, to that level. So no, he never asked. The question he was asking himself is very anxious, is where he's going to go and what he's going to become after death. You know, that, because he doesn't have that certainty where he would end up to. Yeah. So I started, and then, but I was thinking about, because Catholicism, and I said, well, it's beautiful, and I like the universality of Catholicism, because wherever you go, in whatever country and whatever language, Mass is the same. And even if I understand, it happened to me that I went to Japan with my husband, and he tried to look for a Mass, and I find it very beautiful. And even if we don't understand anything, it's Mass, and we can answer and everything like that. So it's beautiful. So, but it's fine. I said, well, stop there, and then that's it. Until one day that I said, well, we every summer after we get married, every summer we go to vacation to certain countries, and then that summer we decided to go to Rome, to Italy. So my husband here arranged that I can meet the Prelate of Opus Dei at that time, who was Don Alvaro, the first successor of San Jose Maria Escriva at that time. Yeah. But I didn't know about that, so because I guess he was praying a lot for me, and then I had a sister-in-law at that time studying there in Rome, so we can arrange that I can meet Don Alvaro. So he can talk to me a little bit about that. Yeah. So there I was, meeting with Don Alvaro in Rome, and I don't remember exactly. I met him. He was a very kind man. You can look at him and then you say, "Oh, it's so kind." It shows on his face, and he was very happy to greet us, because my husband has a mustache, and then he was like, he said, well, I used to have a mustache too. And they have the same profession, because he used to be an engineer, civil engineer before. Don Alvaro, and my husband is civil, so they were. And then after that, I don't remember exactly what he said, because he said a lot of things. So one thing I remember, and it struck me, is he said, I respect your belief, your religion, but he said, it's not very fair for me, when you believe in reincarnation, that this life I have to pay for whatever the other person in the previous life did. So I never thought about that, I said, well, yes, when I'm Buddhist, I try to work hard now to have a better life after. But I never thought, I thought, yes, what did I do wrong the previous life to have a life miserable or poor or rich, whatever now. But I never thought that I have to pay for whatever, the other person did. So that struck me. I said, well, yes, right, I didn't think about that. Because when I was thinking about Catholicism and Buddhism, I said, well, if I want to convert to, before I met Don Alvaro, I said, if I want to convert to Catholicism, there's something that didn't go right there, because I believed in reincarnation. I said, well, it makes sense, when you don't have time to do whatever you do now, you want to do it, you want to catch up after. Yeah. So I believe in reincarnation because it made sense to me. But when Don Alvaro said that, I said, yeah, that's right. Why do I have to pay now for what the other person did? And I didn't even know what he did, or he or she, and
or
then
whatever it was,
yes, and then I didn't, and who judged that I have, so so that I guess the Holy Spirit works there, because that struck me, and I said, okay, that's it. But that explained for me the reincarnation. Maybe to other people that was not enough, but for me it was enough.
That broke your cycle.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
To be open to the Catholic.
Yes. So, but I haven't. But even so, I wasn't decided, because it's difficult, because it's for the all the customs and all the, and my parents too, because I didn't want to hurt them. So I just didn't decide what to do yet. Yeah. So
what was the final straw?
The final straw was my brother. He had a car accident, when he was on vacation that summer or summer after. And when he got out of the car accident, he wasn't hurt. He was hurt, but one of his sister-in-law died in the car accident. And we talked about, before he left for vacation, we talked about religion and things like that. And we said, oh no, religion, fine, but we leave it for after when we get older, because now we don't have time. We have to live now. When he got back to that accident, he said to me, he said, well, whatever you have to do, do it, because if you cross the street and get hit by a car, you don't have time to do it. Too bad. So if you decide, if you want to, do it, so that's the final straw.
That was the kick in the pants that got you moving. Well, that's actually a very good thought, because, both here at EWTN and also with the work I do with Coming Home Network, we're also often dealing with people that are drawn to the fullness of the Catholic faith, but there's a number of things that hold them back, and they're waiting, they're delaying. But the truth is that we don't know God's timing.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you have to do it, you just do it. So he said, well, okay, I'm gonna talk to our parents for you, And so he came up there with me, and then he talked to my parents. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. But you have to decide. It's like Jesus said, when you choose either me or you have to leave your everything behind to follow me. So that's what made me decide.
When did you come into the church?
I was pregnant of our first child, so it was in 1986, right. December 1986. Okay. Yeah, so it was 3 years after our marriage. I never thought about that. So
I bet your husband was happy.
Yes, I was very happy. Yeah,
right. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment with your questions for Kim St. Maurice.
Yes.
We do thank you for sharing with us. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Our guest this evening is Kim St. Maurice from Montreal, Canada. And we've got a caller already ready and an email. Before we go there, though, I want to have you talk just briefly about the fact that you mentioned Opus Dei, that was part of the spark that opened your heart to the Catholic Church, but also has been a strength also in your Catholicism since becoming involved. I think you told me that your father's parents were involved with Opus Dei from almost the beginning here in the United States, right?
I
mean, your husband's parents.
Yes, my husband's parents. They are I think the first Canadians to know Opus Dei. When Opus Dei was first in Canada in 1957, they are the first ones who met Opus Dei, and they are members of Opus Dei since then.
What about Opus Dei has been a particular strength from you, coming from Buddhism into Catholicism?
The strength is, first of all, as I said, it's something that meets what I wanted before, is that to practice your faith in the middle of the world. Yeah. I found it very amazing, interesting that something like that exists. And it's a strength for me because it gives me the means of formation. It gives me tools to actually put into practice that faith in my everyday life. So that helps me with the human virtues and supernatural virtues also.
All right. Yeah, I've found Opus Dei a very wonderful apostolate and very encouraging to our spiritual life. And that's why I've encouraged people to, especially converts, to consider Opus Dei for many ways, because often, let's say, a convert clergyman coming into the Catholic Church will only think about, can I become a priest? And the beauty of Opus Dei reminds us that we seek our holiness right where God plants us.
Exactly.
Regardless of what vocation God has called you to do. We seek that vocation, but we look for that holiness right where He's planted us.
Yes. Then as I thought before, I said, well, God put it here. He cannot forget it, so He has to take care of it all.
Right.
Yes.
So that Again, what I'm encouraging with the convert clergy often is that to be the best layperson they can be, and to seek the holiness there. If the church calls them on to priesthood, well, then that's a different, an extended calling. But not to feel that the only way they can grow in holiness or to be in service is the priesthood.
Right.
That the ministry of the laity, the apostle of the laity, is an extremely powerful place to serve. Let's take our first caller. This comes from Robert in Massachusetts. Hello, Robert. What's your question for us tonight?
Good evening, Marcus. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes.
Kim, congratulations on coming back to the faith of Christ.
Thank you.
And I would like to know if you could help me in changing your faith from Buddhism to Catholicism. Was there any one particular event that occurred that helped you in that? The reason I'm asking is because my sister has converted to Buddhism. And
They're in Massachusetts? Or?
no, actually, she's out in the left coast there, out in California.
Okay.
And she has told me that she has a difficult time with faith, and yet I think it takes a much greater deal of faith to believe in some of the Buddhist precepts and tenets than in knowing that Jesus is the Son of God and through the miracles we know and recorded in history and in the Bible.
All right, Robert, thank you very much for your question. Any words of encouragement?
I guess, when you are baptized, I guess your sister is baptized. When you baptize, you cannot just say, I'm not Catholic anymore. So it's just, I guess you just try something there, because at a certain moment, finding Catholicism, I think if you don't do things with love, you find it difficult. And then a lot of people find that Catholic faith is difficult. We have rules, we have a pope, but if we don't have those guidelines, it's hard for us. And then so people, I think, are attracted to Buddhism because there's no guidelines. There's no pope there to tell us what to do, and there's no church to say that abortion is not good, and so
there's a lot of freedom in Buddhism.
Exactly.
In fact, he's talking about the Buddhism that his sister may have experienced out on the West Coast. That may be kind of a New Age Buddhism. Is it possible? I mean,
yes.
There's many different kinds of Buddhism, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So I think that's people people don't leave their faith, but they're still looking for something, because you have to have something to fill that, that emptiness. So, and Buddhism offers something easy. Yeah. So that's why. But I think with prayers, she will go back. She will come back. Yes.
In fact, Kim, you make a good point there. That if she was, I'm assuming she was baptized. That's what you're saying there. So we've got something to work on here, right?
Yes.
I mean, she has the charism.
Yes, she has that mark there. Yeah.
She has that mark, so you can work on that with prayer. And I know I've said it a bazillion times in the Journey Home program, but one of the main important things, as you said, to conversion is prayer, since it's a work of God's grace anyway. You've said she's searching, and so loving her through it and praying her through it. Yes. There are a number of books out there that we might recommend. I might have, maybe my producer will put on the prompter the name of my previous guest. I think it was Paul Williams. That doesn't sound right to me, but is that right, Paul Williams?
Yes.
Yes, he was the guest from England last year, who was a professor of Eastern religions and a Buddhist at Oxford, and he shared in the Journey Home program and his conversion, and also talked about his book on the Bookmarks program. So I'd highly encourage you to consider that book, which would give you some ideas on reaching out to your sister. Let's take our next email. This comes from Kay in Louisiana. And she writes, Kim, what is the difference? Now, she's going to talk about all different kinds of prayer here. What is the difference between contemplation and mystic prayer in Buddhism and Catholicism? She has three questions here. So the first one has the difference between contemplative and mystic prayer in the two faiths. And two, how is your prayer life different as a result of the sacraments? She's talking personally. The sacraments, how they made a difference. And three, did any contemplative authors influence your decision to convert and why. So maybe first, any differences between the mystical contemplative life in the two faiths?
Yes. I think there's a big difference. I used to, when I was Buddhist, I used to do like my parents did, which is meditation. So you're sitting there and trying to, not to think about, to empty yourself and not to think about that. And then finally I fell asleep because, and I just wonder how people can, I guess people can do that at a certain
They say their mantra.
level.
Is that part of Buddhism, the mantra? Is that Hinduism?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes, and you reach that level. But the difference between Catholicism and Buddhism is Catholicism, when you meditate, you talk to somebody, you talk to God. Well, actually, it's a conversation a dialogue between God and you. While the meditation, mystic thing in Buddhism is that you just don't talk to anybody. Or you try to repeat the same sentence to try to empty your mind. And it's a big difference there, because when you talk to God, you say, well, God loves me, and then, I talk to him about all my concerns, all my issues, and my defects, my problems, and he can help me, and my joys and everything. But then the other side is I just me, myself, and then try to get to that level.
You're trying to purify the inside so that hopefully the next life will be one that you can break from what was called the great Mandela, the circle. You want to break free from that. Whereas in Catholicism, we're trying to open for God and be in communion, in union with God.
Yes.
So that really is a big part. And the one comment I would make and add to this is as a disappointment that I've often seen in sometimes contemporary Catholic books that, in my view, are pushing the envelope too far to the left side, in which they're making the connection between Catholic mysticism and Buddhist mysticism, for example, too tight, too close, intermingling, overlapping, and the concepts get blurred. And one place I saw it not long ago, we were looking at some 5th grade CCD materials published by a Catholic publisher that were teaching 5th graders to say a mantra.
Oh, yeah.
And the reality is that on the one hand, an adult Catholic, a faithful, mature Catholic who has moved well along in the mystical life and as well is mature in the mystical life may be able to explore some of the Eastern ways of prayer, knowing the distinctions, as you said.
Yeah, but even so, it could be dangerous.
It could be dangerous. Exactly right.
Yes.
I mean, that's why I'm very hesitant to even recommend it at all. But I'm saying possibly those who are well along and mature, well informed, might explore. But the one thing you don't start teaching our 5th graders mantras. Do they understand?
No, I think that's something.
To me, that's an absurd thing.
Yes, there's
it's
a
one
new
of those
age in there. Yeah.
people trying to be a bit too ecumenical for my flavor, and mixing things up. I think that we need to, obviously, I'm sure our audience at home recognize we need to begin with the basics of the Catholic faith and build on that and focus on that.
Exactly, and then you have to, I think with the children or even with adults, you have to give them something solid first, and then after that they can choose, because otherwise if you give them too many things, they cannot choose. It's just like an adult. Yes.
It's the danger of people saying, well, teach me to pray, and the person says, well, there are many ways to pray. I really can't teach you the way to pray. And so you leave them in confusion. Rather than say, you want to learn to pray, here are some basic places to start that are tried and true. That's why we teach the Our Father and the Hail Mary and the Glory Be, because they're tried and true, and we know they're scriptural, and they've been practiced in every culture by the church throughout the ages. And so you begin with the basics. All right, the book I wanted to recommend, Andrea, our producer, reminded, is by Paul Williams. It's called The Unexpected Way on Converting from Buddhism to Catholicism. And I'm pretty sure it's available on the religious catalog if you're interested, and it might be a good book for that previous caller to begin with ideas on how to reach out to his sister. Okay, this is from, this email is from James in Maine, and you spent a couple years in Maine, that's right?
2 years, yes.
Okay. Was it any warmer in Maine?
No, not really. A little bit, but not much, yes.
All right. Dear Kim, I noticed that the faith in Canada is not as strong as in the United States. Is this your observation? And if so, what do you think is the cause? Also, do you see a hope for the renewal of the faith in French Canada? Let me make the first comment. I noticed that the faith in Canada is not as strong as in the United States. I don't know if I agree with that.
I would say in Quebec maybe, but not the rest of Canada. In Quebec maybe the faith is, because when I spent 2 years in Maine, yes, I can see that. Even if you can talk of God to people easily, when in Quebec you have to be prudent before you talk of that.
Things have changed there.
Exactly, yes. But now I think things are changing now with the young people, especially after the World Youth Day in Toronto last year or 2 years ago. So there's hope there. And
So the second part of his question, do you see hope for the renewal of the faith in French Canada? You're seeing good
yes,
things.
yes, I think so, yes, because after that event, the young people get together, and then you can see more and more people in the church going to Mass, and people, people don't want to talk to you about that subject, but if you talk to them a little bit more, push a little bit more profoundly the subject, you can see that people are searching for that and in need of that, and I think there's hope there. Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. I've noticed in the United States that we went through a time where it seemed that there were some Catholic seminaries, some Catholic colleges that had moved too far to the left, if I can use that analogy. You know, they in their views of Catholicism had moved too far to a progressive direction and were not very committed to the faith.
Mm-hmm.
But then, in some cases, very quickly, they've moved back to a very strong commitment to the faith. And sometimes I wonder if what often happens is that, in fact, a large majority of the leadership is kind of middle of the road and will sway like grass in a field. And you have some real strong, outspoken people on either end.
Uh-huh.
And at any given time, the real strong leaders
Uh-huh.
will sway the bigger group. And you'll get the impression like the whole school or a whole area has gone in one direction, when in reality the majority or a large percentage are kind of leaning towards the outspoken few. And if we see a shift in the tide in the leadership, then they'll go in that direction. And I wonder if a little bit of that might be happening in Quebec, where a lot of the outspoken people might be fighting against the church, but there's a kind of a quiet group of folk whose faith is still in there.
I think it used to be like that, but the church where we go now, I see that people go to that church a lot, and not just the same parish. You know, all the parishes, they go there because the priest there, he says things that has to be said.
Okay.
You know, so if he people are searching for that, looking for something genuine, true. So when the priest speaks accordingly to the faith, what has been taught, people listen and they go more.
So it might have been that for many of them, that faith was still there. The seeds were there, but because of certain outspoken people, they kept it more inner.
Right, and they said, well, they don't want to speak out. They're afraid of being different. Yeah. So.
But maybe because of events like World Youth Day, that people are getting more bold in expressing their faith, especially the young. God bless them.
Exactly.
That's the future.
Yes.
So that's great. We have an email from Tom in Wisconsin. Greetings, Kim and Marcus. Excellent show once again. Thank you, Tom. I have two questions about the consequences of abortion as viewed by Buddhists. These might be questions that Buddhists don't generally even think about, but is the unborn baby considered to be human from a Buddhist perspective? And what happens to people who abort unborn babies, again, from a Buddhist perspective? Any thoughts on that? An unborn baby, would it be considered human from a Buddhist perspective?
If I think so. I think so. If I talk to my parents, if I talk to my father, he wouldn't do such a thing, because he says respect life. So I guess it's we consider it a human being, and we don't. We have Buddhism has the human virtues. You have all the human virtues, so you don't kill. people. So if a baby even is unborn, it's a
Is
baby.
it Buddhism that, or is it Hinduism that won't even step on a fly? Is that a certain branches of
Yeah,
Buddhism?
Buddhism. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly, because you could become,
That
in
might
the
be
next
your Aunt
level.
Tilly or something, you don't
yes,
know.
Yes, yes.
So there would be great respect for all of life. So would you say that in general Buddhists would be against abortion?
I think so. I talk based on what my parents would
Yes.
do, and they wouldn't do abortion. They wouldn't do it. So
But you also mentioned, as you said, that in some sense moving to Buddhism offers this freedom, lack of rules. But the point is, depending on which branch of Buddhism you're in or even where you're celebrating it, I'm wondering if maybe the California version, certain aspects of Buddhism might be very free
could be.
because
Yeah.
of the influences that might be there and the pressures in the culture. All right. Because I'm not sure either. I'm trying to think where
Yes.
Buddhists would stand on that. But it's interesting, again, it's a fine question in the sense that if there's no God, who's judging anyway?
Yeah, but they respect Buddhists respect other people's lives, though. That's what Buddha taught, teaches that you don't kill.
Yep.
So you don't kill animals, or you don't kill people, either human beings. It's even more
very pacifist.
important. Yes.
Brother Pastor.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's take our next question. Jennifer from California. Hello, Jennifer. What's your question for us tonight?
Hi. Okay. Yeah, my husband is Buddhist and Vietnamese. We've been married 23 years.
Hi.
And I have found over the years that it seems as if he is actually, I don't know, becoming more entrenched in his Buddhist belief and more hostile towards my faith.
Wow.
And I am wondering, how does a Buddhist reconcile the concept of ancestor worship with reincarnation? It doesn't seem that those two logically fit together. If you're doing ancestor worship, you could potentially be worshiping that fly on the wall or yourself or your child. You don't know what being your ancestor is in this life.
At the present time. Very interesting. Is that a very active part of your husband's faith?
He's not extremely active in his faith. I think he's a typical Buddhist. He goes to temple a few times a year, and they have an annual ancestor worship ceremonies that they do,
Interesting.
and then the anniversaries of the deceased ancestors' deaths.
Wow. Okay. Ancestor worship. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Right.
my father still does it, and which is a good thing because it reminds us of our ancestors, and I
So
think
there's a good aspect to it.
exactly.
Yeah, there's a
Yes,
good
my
aspect to it.
father still, once a year worship like my grandmother who died when he was a young boy. My father. It's like it's been a long time ago she died, and he still remembers her,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. But I guess you don't remember the person as what the person is now because we don't know where the person is. But in Catholic faith, the person is not on, doesn't come back anymore. But you remember the person as a person that you know.
Yeah.
So my father would worship like his mother. That
Now, when they say worship,
not worship. Remembers.
yeah, I was
her.
going to say that
'Cause-
again, they don't deify your ancestors.
No,
so it
no, we
isn't
cannot
worship,
worship.
as we would understand it, but they would honor them highly.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But it is an interesting thought that there's this contradiction about remembering the past and really doing that, but yet they're not completely gone. I mean, they're here somewhere.
Yes, exactly. You remember as a souvenir, a person who used to be there, he was there with you, but now you don't know where the person is and what the person is either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably, again, one of those questions that your average Buddhist doesn't think about or doesn't want to go there because there's no explanation, right?
Yes, I guess so. I guess so because yes, I used to say to my father, well, grandmother, she died a long time ago. Why did you still, do things? And well, it's okay. It's just, it's become a habit, I guess.
A habit, yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay, let's take another break. We'll come back in just a moment with some final words for the journey home. I'll come back. Kim, in closing, if there are any Buddhists might be watching, any words to them on how or why they should consider the Catholic faith? Anything unique about the Catholic faith you'd like to emphasize?
Yes, the Buddhism is, for me, the Buddhism gives me the human virtues. I learn a lot with my parents, through my parents, the human virtue that they have, and then they pass it on to me. But then at a certain time, you see that it's not enough because Buddhism doesn't give you all the answers. Where you're from, what you do here on earth, and where you're going after. Yeah. And then for me, Catholicism has the answers to that, and just gives you another level. It's a supernatural level that you don't have in Buddhism. And the sacraments. The sacraments in the Catholicism give you hope, which I think does not exist. They don't have in Buddhism, because in Buddhism we just rely on ourselves, on human being. Buddha said that I'm a man, I reached that level, you're a human being, you will be able to. So there's no God, it's a human. Yeah. But in Catholicism there's sacraments, and we hope, and then, and God knows that we are weak, so he gives us sacraments. That is the beauty of Catholicism.
Grace. That's right.
Yes.
I was thinking of something else, that not only does Buddhism not have a God, it doesn't have a Savior. In reality, it's ourselves. Mm-hmm. In Buddhism, you're trying to be better, and that's why a monk would isolate himself to try and keep all the distractions away so he can focus and empty himself and probably get perfect so that he can be freed from this big cycle. We have Jesus. We have our Savior who frees us from sin.
Yes.
And breaks the cycle of our sin so that, we don't end up going on and on and on, but we do live forever. And it's either living with God forever or apart from God. Mm-hmm. And the difference is our Savior, whom we accept by faith through grace. So right. Those are also great things that we would encourage our Buddhist viewers to examine. And I would remind you of that book by Paul Williams. You might check that in the religious catalog. Kim, thank you very much for joining us on the journey home.
Thank you.
And may God bless you and your continued
Thank you very much.
Your life with Christ, and your family also. And thank you for sharing with us about Opus Dei, because it is an encouragement to so many of us who seek to grow in holiness for God's plan. So thank you very much.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on the journey home. I hope this has been an encouragement to you. Let's pray for our brothers and sisters who struggle with other faiths, and hope that by God's grace they'll be brought home to the fullness of the Catholic faith. God bless. We'll see you again next week.